All right, if you're gearing up for your GCSE Religious Studies exam, specifically Component 2, sin and forgiveness, well, you're exactly where you need to be. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to break down exactly how to confidently conquer those super complex moral decisions and really give you the tools to walk into that exam room feeling totally prepared. We're going to tackle the absolute core concepts, use them to structure your understanding, and basically just get you totally ready to crush those tough essay questions. Let's dive in. So let me ask you something right out of the gate. Would you steal a loaf of bread to survive? I know, it sounds kind of like a dramatic movie plot, right? But dropping straight into this high-stakes mindset is exactly what you need for the exam. You've got to be able to look at these really intense, real-world dilemmas and evaluate them using specific ethical frameworks. So keep your own answer to that bread question in the back of your mind as we go through this. Look, making decisions about how we behave is, well, it's incredibly complex. Human life is messy. But the good news? For your exam material, it essentially just boils down to two common forms of morality. Basically, we can take all of that crazy real-world complexity and simplify it by sorting it into two totally distinct competing camps. And honestly, understanding the tension between these two camps, that is the absolute key to mastering this entire section of Component 2. Okay, so camp number 1, absolute morality. The magic phrase here is holding a moral principle with absolutely no exceptions, like literally zero exceptions. I really want you to highlight that phrase in your brain right now, no exceptions. It applies to all situations completely regardless of the context or the circumstance. In an absolute framework, the rules do not bend, period. Not for anyone and not for anything. Let's think about the principle that stealing is wrong. Under the really strict framework of absolute morality, this acts as a completely unbreakable law. You remember our loaf of bread from a minute ago? Well, if a person holds the absolute moral view that stealing is always wrong, then even if someone is literally starving to death, this framework dictates that it would not be right for them to steal it. The fact that they are actively starving, it just doesn't matter to the rule. Stealing remains wrong. End of discussion. And this logic extends way beyond just stealing bread. Another major example you need to know is the belief that it is wrong to kill. If you apply absolute morality here, that rule applies across the board, in all situations. We're talking war, abortion, euthanasia, all of it. It strictly forbids killing no matter the reason, and no matter how deeply emotional the situation might be where someone might feel the need or the opportunity to end a life. The rule simply cannot be broken. But, okay, what if the world isn't actually that black and white? That brings us right to our second camp, which is relative morality. The tone completely shifts here. This is the idea that moral principles can actually be adapted or adjusted depending on the specific situation at hand. So instead of following this rigid, unbreakable law, relative morality stops, weighs the options, and decides what is right or wrong in that exact moment. It is entirely focused on adaptability. Now, if you want to structure a perfect top marks comparative essay paragraph, putting these two frameworks head-to-head using our bread case study is your ultimate blueprint. On one side, you've got absolute morality, stating it is never right to steal bread, even if you are starving. On the flip side, relative morality argues that, sure, stealing is generally wrong, but it is justifiable if someone has absolutely no other way to get food and survive. Presenting that strict rule, and then immediately hitting them with a situational exception, that is exactly what your examiners are looking for. Let's take that exact same comparative structure and apply it to the ultimate life and death showdown. We can contrast the absolute stance, which, remember, is that killing is wrong in all situations, no matter the reason, right up against the relative stance. And the relative stance argues that if someone kills in self-defense, it actually might be acceptable. The situation at hand, which in this case is protecting your own life from an attacker, literally adjusts the moral principle. So here is your core exam strategy. To really lock this in, you want to deliberately repeat these key phrases in your answers. Always, always contrast no exceptions when you're talking about absolute morality with adaptable to the situation when you're discussing relative morality. Using those specific terms is basically a giant flashing sign to the examiner that you have a crystal clear understanding of these completely contrasting worldviews. Which brings us to one final, kind of provocative thought to leave you with today. When you're faced with a complex moral choice, do you stick to an absolute rule, or does the situation change everything? Think back to that starving person or the person defending themselves from an attacker. Truly understanding the tension between those two answers is literally what Component 2 is all about. Take a second to really ponder how you would personally answer this, because forming your own well-reasoned arguments is the absolute next great step in your revision. Keep studying hard, use these two frameworks as your anchor, and you are absolutely going to ace this topic.